Hey, welcome to UK Wildcrafts. So late spring is a very abundant time of year for a forager. There's lots of greens and edible flowers around. And of course some of the plants that I included in my early spring video are still going to be around now, but in this video I'm including the plants that I consider to be at their peak in late spring. So I don't really buy any vegetables from the shops this time of year because everywhere I look there's wild foods around. So this is water mint, Mentha aquatica. It's very common alongside ponds and rivers, streams, and just damp, marshy ground. Still quite small at the moment. We're in April, but midway through next month it should be quite big. So it's really easy to identify by the smell. If you just crush it, you'll get a strong peppermint smell. And you can also ID it by the stem. All mints have a square stem. So the leaf arrangement, they grow in opposite pairs, growing alternately down the stem. So two on this side, opposite each other, then further down, two on, going that way, and that goes all the way down the stem. And they can have a purple tinge to the leaves as well. A bit later in the year it will get purple flowers, and you can use this instead of garden mint. Pretty much anything that you'd use mint for, you can use water mint. This is garlic mustard, Alliaria petiolata, also known as hedge garlic or jack by the hedge. So the basal leaves, down by the bottom, they're a bit more rounded and they're darker green. Now I don't normally eat these because they're a bit bitter. It's a biennial plant, so it has a 2-year growth cycle. This is the first year's leaves, and yeah, they're not very good. What you want is the 2nd year growth, this growth here. So the leaves are a lot lighter green and they're more pointed as well. And the leaves are serrated. If you pick one of the leaves, give it a crush and smell it, you'll get a very faint smell of mustard. They grow on upright stems, and the flowers are white, small and cruciform, so forming a cross. They make a nice addition to salads, and you can also make a good pesto from them as well. And this time of year in late spring you'll find these just about everywhere, and in quite big numbers as well. All of this along here is garlic mustard. Late spring is the time for gorse flowers. Only the flowers and the flower buds are edible from this plant. The rest of it is slightly toxic, and don't eat the seed pods. It's really easy to identify from the yellow flowers. Look a little bit like the flowers from peas, and very spiny branches as well. The flowers kind of smell and taste a little bit like coconut. Sometimes they're a bit bitter, but they have a mulled coconut smell, and they're good for making like an alcohol infusion. They go well with gin. It's more common around coastal areas, but you do occasionally find it inland as well. This is hairy bittercress, Cardamine hirsuta. You see the basal leaves grow in a rosette around the stem, and it's got small round leaves that grow in opposing pairs, and then it's got a terminal leaf at the end, and that's usually a bit bigger. Up the stem you get small white flowers, and they are cruciform, which means they grow in a cross of 4 petals. This will grow just about anywhere
It looks little cracks in pavements, and yeah, it's got a nice peppery taste. It tastes just like the cress that you get in shops.
Young beech leaves make a really good substitute for lettuce, but you've got to catch them when they're really young and they're almost translucent. You can also make a good liqueur from these called beech leaf noyau, which is a gin-based liqueur. I'm making some of that at the moment. I'll post a video on that when it's done. So not all tree leaves are edible. You've got to make sure you know how to ID a beech tree. I'll show you how to do that now. So first of all, we look at the bark. Beech trees have a nice smooth grey bark, and they can get fissures and cracks in them as they get older, but most of the time they're nice and smooth. And we look at the ground below the tree. First of all, we give away is the fact that there's loads of dead beech leaves there, and if you dig away a bit further you'll find the casings of the beech nuts all around the tree. Also, beech trees normally have quite a dense canopy, so you'll see it's quite sparse vegetation below the beech trees, whereas the rest of the woods, it's got quite a lot of bluebells and grass growing through it. So next up we look at the leaves. As I said before, you want the really young leaves that are almost translucent. So the margins of the leaves are wavy, that is, the edges of the leaf are wavy, and if you look really carefully you'll see on the edges of the leaf you've got really fine hairs. The leaves lose those hairs as they get older, so it's only when they're really young. Each leaf normally has about 9 pairs of veins that run diagonally down the leaf. And the budding arrangement on the stems are alternate, so it'll have a leaf on one side, and then a leaf on the other side, and then one on the other side, and that runs all the way up the stem. If you catch them just at the right time, these leaves can have an almost citrus tang to them. This is lady smock, or cuckoo flower, Cardamine pratensis, a member of the brassica family, and you'll find it growing in grass fields and meadows. It starts to flower in late spring, and the basal leaves you can find all year round. So the basal leaves look a bit similar to the closely related bittercress. They've got more rounded leaves that grow in opposing pairs opposite the stem, and then one terminal leaf on the end. And if you go up the flower stem, the leaves are a lot thinner, and again they grow in opposing pairs with a terminal leaf at the end. And the leaves have quite a nice kick to them, a bit like a mustard flavour. The flowers are cruciform, so growing in a cross of 4 petals, and they're white with a bit of a pink purple tinge to them. And again they've got quite a nice strong mustard kick to them. This is 3-cornered leek, Allium triquetrum. The whole plant is edible and has a mild leek onion flavour. The leaves are long and thin, and they've got a really pronounced midrib.
if you crush them, they got the smell of onion, like all alliums. You could potentially confuse this for bluebell or snowdrops. The leaves look fairly similar, but they don't. Those two don't have the onion smell. So if it's got an onion smell, then it's safe. The stems are triangular. If you roll them in your fingers, get a triangular feel, or three-cornered, where it gets its name from. For me, this is the best bit to eat because it tastes just like leek, and they're quite succulent as well. And the flowers are white, and they have, when they're opened up, they have little green lines on them. This is fennel. Fairly common in the south. You'll often find it on just like scrubland and next to roads as well. It's really common by the coast, but you can occasionally find it inland, like I have here. Up north, it's fairly rare inland, but you still find it by the coast. It's really easy to identify by the smell. If you crush the leaves, you'll get a strong aniseed smell. And the leaves are really thin as well. A bit later in the year, it has yellow flowers, and they'll leave seeds, which I really like added into curries. I also like taking the leaves, like especially the younger growth, like this here. And I like just chopping those up, putting them in salads, or just making a herbal tea. So yeah, I absolutely love aniseed, so it makes a nice tea. This is red clover, Trifolium pratense. The leaves are edible. They come in normally in threes, and they have white chevrons, like little white arrows on the leaf. This time of year though, in late spring, we're after the flowers. This is red clover, so the flowers are like a pinky red colour. But you also get white clover, Trifolium repens, which is also edible. So these are highly nutritious. They've got a lot of micronutrients in, and they're quite high in protein as well. And they've got a taste of somewhere between pea and broad bean. And they're actually surprisingly filling, these flowers. If you're out on a walk and you're quite hungry, just a handful of these can take the edge off your hunger. Right, this is wood sorrel. You see it looks fairly similar to clover, but it's got heart-shaped leaves. It's fairly common all throughout woodlands, mixed woodlands and coniferous, especially this time of year in late spring. It's got a really nice flavour. It's like somewhere between lemon and apple peel. So very citric sort of flavour, and it's oxalic acid that gives it that flavour, which is fine to eat, but it becomes mildly toxic in large doses, so you don't want to eat too many of any of the sorrels. The leaves are very papery thin, and the stems are green, but they go a bit red the further down you go towards the base. So the flowers are white, they have 5 petals, and they have pink veins. So grown in amongst the grass here, we've got yarrow, which is a very common plant in amongst grasslands. In fact, the whole of this grass here is just growing in amongst it everywhere. It's not got much of a flavour, to be honest. It's almost a bit medicinal, but it makes a good tea, and it's got a lot of health benefits as well. And it's antibacterial and can help staunch bleeding. You see it looks a bit feather-like, and its Latin name, Achillea millefolium. The millefolium part means 1,000 leaves. And it can almost look a bit like fennel. You'll find dead nettles everywhere this time of year, in amongst hedgerows, along roadsides. And these are the Lamium family. This is white dead nettle, Lamium album. And you'll see they look very much like stinging nettles, but they're not actually related to them. If you look over here, you've got white dead nettles growing next to stinging nettles, and they look very similar. They've got the same leaf arrangement, so the leaves grow in opposing pairs opposite the stem, and those pairs alternate their direction down the stem. So we've got 2 leaves going that way, 2 leaves going that way, and so on down the stem. But the dead nettles, the real giveaway is the flowers and the fact that they don't sting. They're very nutritious, just like stinging nettles. They have a lot of micronutrients. They make a good herbal tea, and I also use them sautéed. It's cooked in a bit of butter mixed with other wild greens. And the flowers have got like a little sweet kick to them. Here we have yellow dead nettle. It's also known as yellow archangel, Lamium galeobdolon. But just out of interest, if you see this plant and it's got variegated leaves, then you've got the invasive subspecies, and its name is a bit of a mouthful. It's Lamium galeobdolon, subspecies argentatum. And here as well we also have the purple dead nettle, Lamium purpureum.
And of course there are still a lot of the edible plants that I included in my early spring foraging video still around now, like the common hogweed shoots that I eat with pretty much every meal at the moment. And I found loads and loads of wild garlic, and this is the time of year to be eating the flowers. And also I found elderflower, which is still quite early at the moment. I'll be including that in my early summer video coming in a few months. But thank you for watching UK Wildcraft. If you haven't already, you can subscribe here.